The notification lit up her phone at 2004-7 in the morning. Emma Schneider should have been asleep. She should have closed her laptop an hour ago, should have ignored the gentle ping that cut through the silence of her cramped student apartment in Munich. But she didn't. She never did. Because on the other side of that screen was a man who made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. A man who promised her everything. A man whose name she would never speak to her family. And in 6 weeks, Emma Schneider would be dead in a hotel room 3,000 miles from home. Her body cold on imported sheets, her phone still glowing with his last message. The coroner would note the time of death as sometime between 4 and 6 in the morning. The police would note the bruising on her wrists. Her mother would note only the silence where her daughter's voice should have been on Sunday evening, the call that never came, the absence that would swallow the rest of her life whole. Emma was ordinary in the way that most 21-year-olds are ordinary, which is to say she contained entire universes that no one bothered to ask about. She studied international business at Ludwig Maximilian University, a degree she had chosen because it sounded practical, and her mother worried constantly about practicality. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Schwabing with her roommate Lena, a nursing student who left passive-aggressive notes about dirty dishes and always fell asleep during movies. The apartment had thin walls and a radiator that clanked through the night and a window that looked out onto a street where nothing ever happened. Emma had covered one wall with photographs. Her father at a Christmas market, her younger brother Felix making a stupid face, her mother in the garden behind their house in Heidelberg, squinting into the sun. She had lost her father when she was 16. A heart attack that came without warning on a Tuesday morning while he was drinking coffee at the kitchen table. One moment he was there, reading the newspaper and humming something tuneless. The next he was clutching his chest, his face gray, her mother screaming into the phone for an ambulance that would arrive too late. Emma had been at school. She had been taking a math test. She had been worrying about a question involving derivatives when her father's heart stopped beating. That dissonance, that brutal fact that the world continued its mundane rotation even as her entire life shattered, had never quite left her. She carried it like a stone in her chest. Heavy, smooth from constant handling. Always there. Since that day, Emma had learned to carry grief quietly. She did not burden others with the weight of what she had lost. She video-called her mother every Sunday evening, always from the same spot on her bed, always with the same careful smile that said everything was fine. She asked about Felix, about the garden, about her mother's shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. She never mentioned that she ate pasta 4 nights a week because it was cheap. She never mentioned the student loan statements that arrived in her email like small acts of violence. She never mentioned that she sent money home when she could, which was almost never, because her mother's salary barely covered the mortgage and Felix's school expenses and the cost of existing in a world that demanded payment for everything. Emma wore her father's watch every day. It was a simple thing, a Seiko with a leather band that had cracked and faded over the years. She had taken it from his nightstand the day after he died, had slipped it onto her wrist, and had not removed it since. The watch ran 3 minutes slow. She never bothered to fix it. Some part of her liked the idea that she existed in a slightly different time than everyone else, 3 minutes behind, 3 minutes closer to when her father was still alive. She had dreams that felt too large for her small life. She wanted to work in international markets, to travel, to build something that would make her mother proud and prove that her father's death had not been the thing that defined her. She was learning English through American podcasts, her accent improving with each episode, the rhythms of the language becoming natural in her mouth. On weekends, she worked at a bookstore near Marienplatz, shelving novels in languages she didn't speak, watching tourists take photos of buildings that had stood for centuries. She felt small sometimes. Small and stuck and hungry for something more than the narrow path laid out before her. She would stand at the window of her apartment at night, looking out at the lights of Munich, at all those other windows with all those other lives, and feel the weight of her own insignificance pressing down like a physical thing. That hunger, that beautiful and dangerous hunger for more, is what made her vulnerable. That is what men like David Reichman understand. They can smell it. They know how to find the girls who want something better and convince them that wanting is the same as deserving. It started on a website called Seeking Arrangements. Emma had heard about it from a girl in her economics lecture, a girl named Sophie who wore Cartier bracelets and carried a handbag that cost more than Emma's rent. Sophie had leaned over during a break in early January and whispered that there were men, older men, successful men, who wanted nothing more than to help ambitious young women achieve their goals. Mentorship, she called it, mutually beneficial relationships. She made it sound elegant, sophisticated, a way for smart women to leverage their youth and beauty into opportunity. Sophie showed Emma her profile on her phone. a carefully curated collection of photos and words that presented her as worldly and interesting and worth investing in. "Look," Sophie had said, scrolling through messages from men offering trips and allowances and connections. "It's not what you think. It's just about being honest about what both people want." Emma told herself she was just curious. She told herself she would only look. But curiosity has a way of becoming participation when you are tired and broke, and your mother's voice cracks on the phone when she talks about the cost of Felix's textbooks, when you are watching other students go out for drinks while you calculate whether you can afford a coffee, when you are wearing the same 3 outfits in rotation because new clothes are a luxury you cannot justify, when you are 21 years old and feel like your life is a waiting room where nothing will ever actually begin. She created a profile on a Tuesday night in late January. She used a photo from the previous summer, taken at a lake outside Munich, her hair lighter from the sun, her smile genuine because she had not yet been thinking about websites like this or men like David. She wrote that she was a student seeking guidance and support from someone worldly and established. She mentioned her interest in international business, her fluency in German and English, her desire to learn from someone with real-world experience. She did not mention the word money. No one did. The entire site operated in a language of euphemism. Sugar daddy, sugar baby, arrangement, allowance, mentorship. Words that made transactions sound like relationships and loneliness sound like choice. Within an hour, she had 17 messages. Most were exactly what she expected. Crude, transactional. Men who sent photos of themselves shirtless or sitting in expensive cars or holding up wads of cash like props in a rap video. Men who asked for her measurements in the first message. Men who wanted to know if she was open-minded, which was code for a dozen different degradations they would later reveal. Emma felt sick reading them. She was about to delete her profile, to close the laptop and pretend this had never happened, when a new message arrived. This one was different. David Reichman, 46 years old, investment consultant based in Chicago. His profile picture showed a man with graying temples and kind eyes, standing in front of what looked like Lake Michigan at sunset. He wore a navy sweater and a slight smile. He looked like someone's father, like someone you could trust. His message was thoughtful. He asked about her studies, about what specifically interested her in international business. He mentioned that he had spent a semester in Berlin in his 20s, studying economics, and still missed the architecture and the density of history in every street. He said he was looking for intellectual companionship, someone curious about the world, someone he could mentor and support as they built their future. He ended with, "I believe in investing in people, not just markets. Looking forward to hearing from you, David." Emma read the message 3 times. She looked at his profile. He had a master's degree from Northwestern. He listed his company as Reichman and Associates. He had written a short bio about his philosophy on mentorship and the importance of giving back. He included a quote from Maya Angelou about helping others climb. He seemed genuine. He seemed safe. And more than anything, he seemed interested in her as a person, not as a transaction, she replied the next morning. Something careful and polite. She thanked him for his message and said that she appreciated his thoughtful approach. She told him a bit more about her studies, about her father, about her hopes to work internationally. She did not mention money. She did not mention need. She kept it professional, academic, the kind of message you might send to a professor or a distant relative. David responded within 10 minutes. His reply was warm and encouraging. He asked more questions. He shared a story about his own father, who had also died young, and how that loss had shaped his understanding of time and priorities. He said that Emma reminded him of himself at that age, hungry for opportunity, trying to find her way. Over the next days they continued talking, first through the website's messaging system, then through WhatsApp. The conversations were long and easy. He asked about her classes, her roommate, her favorite places in Munich. He sent her photos of Chicago in the winter, the skyline at dusk, the frozen lake, coffee shops he thought she would love. He told her about his work, about advising clients on international investments, about the loneliness of business travel, about a marriage that had ended 5 years ago after his wife decided she wanted different things. He was vulnerable in a way that felt real. He talked about his therapy sessions, about learning to be alone, about how hard it was to meet genuine people when you reached a certain level of success. "Everyone wants something," he wrote. "Everyone has an angle. That's why I appreciate talking to you. You're honest, you're real." Emma felt something shift in her chest when she read that. She had never thought of herself as particularly honest or real. She had always felt like she was performing, pretending to be more confident or more capable than she actually was. But David saw something in her. David believed in her. And slowly, carefully, over weeks of conversation, she began to believe in him. He never asked for photos. He never made it feel sexual. He just wanted to talk, to understand her, to be there for her. In early February, when Emma mentioned in passing that her laptop was dying and she could not afford a new one, David sent her 300 euros through PayPal with a note that said, "You can't build your future without the right tools. Consider this an investment." Emma stared at the notification on her phone for 10 minutes. She thought about sending it back. She thought about how accepting it would change things, would create an obligation. But then she thought about her old laptop, about how it took 5 minutes to start up, about how she had missed the deadline the week before because it had crashed while she was writing a paper. She thought about her mother working double shifts. She thought about the stack of bills on the kitchen counter. She accepted the money. She typed, "Thank you, I don't know what to say. This means so much." David replied, "You don't have to say anything. I'm happy to help. That's what this is about." After that, it became easier. When Emma needed money for textbooks, David sent it. When her rent was late, David covered it. The amounts were never huge, never enough to feel like she was being bought, but enough to make her life bearable, enough to let her breathe. And with each transfer, with each kind gesture, Emma felt the weight of obligation growing. She told herself it was fine. She told herself David expected nothing in return. But some part of her, the part that had been raised to understand that nothing in this world comes free, knew better. In early March, David suggested that Emma visit him in Chicago during her spring break. He would cover everything, the flight, the hotel, meals, everything. They could explore the city together. He could introduce her to contacts in international business, people who might help her career. It would be educational, he said, an opportunity. And more than that, he said, "I would love to finally meet you in person. I feel like I know you so well through our conversations. I think we have something special." Emma stared at the message. Her heart was beating too fast. She knew what this was, or she thought she did. Or she wanted to believe it was something innocent, even though she knew, on some level, that nothing about this was innocent. She thought about all the money he had sent. She thought about the hours they had talked, the secrets she had shared, the way he made her feel understood. She thought about her apartment, about her mother, about the narrow borders of her life. And she thought, what if this is real? What if this is the opportunity I've been waiting for? What if I say no and spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened? She said yes. She said yes before she could talk herself out of it. And the moment she pressed send, something in her stomach twisted, a feeling she would later recognize as her body trying to warn her, trying to tell her that this was wrong, that she should stop, that she should run. But she ignored it. She told herself she was being paranoid. She told herself David was kind. She told herself this would be fine. The flight was booked for April 12th, Lufthansa direct to O'Hare. A room at the Langham, which Emma looked up and felt physically dizzy at the nightly rate of. David sent her the itinerary with a note. "I can't wait to finally meet you in person. You're going to love this city. Bring a jacket, though. The wind off the lake is no joke." Emma bought a new dress with money she could not afford to spend. She told Lena she was visiting a friend from high school who had moved to America for a gap year. Lena frowned and said, "You've never mentioned this friend before." Emma laughed it off, said they had reconnected online. Lena did not push it. She never did. That was the thing about Lena. She respected boundaries, even when boundaries were just elaborate lies. Emma told her mother she was going on a university trip, a study program focused on American business practices. Her mother sounded worried on the phone. "America," she said, "that's so far." Emma assured her it was safe, that the university had arranged everything, that she would call as soon as she landed. Her mother made her promise to be careful. Emma promised. Another lie. Another small betrayal. They were piling up now, these lies, building a wall between her and everyone who loved her. But she told herself it was temporary. She told herself that once she came back, once this trip was over, she would tell the truth, she would explain everything, and it would be fine. What Emma did not know, what she could not have known, was that David Reichman did not exist. What Emma did not know was that the man she had been talking to for 2 months was named Marcus Webb, that he was 33 years old, that he lived in a basement apartment in Cicero and spent his days constructing elaborate fantasies for young women who wanted to believe in fairy tales. The LinkedIn profile she had looked up, the business website, the references to Northwestern and international consulting, all of it was fiction. Marcus was good at fiction. He had been doing this for 3 years. He had learned what worked. Older, distinguished, emotionally vulnerable, generous without being pushy, interested in her mind, not just her body, at least at first. The photos on his profile belonged to a German expatriate named Klaus Muller, who lived in Toronto and had no idea his Facebook pictures were being used to catfish young women across Europe. The credit cards Marcus used were obtained through a network of online fraudsters who bought and sold stolen identities like baseball cards. The PayPal transfers came from hacked accounts or money mules, people who were themselves being scammed into receiving and forwarding funds. Marcus had never been to Northwestern. He had barely finished high school, but he understood people. He understood need. He understood that a girl who was desperate and hopeful and a little bit lonely could be convinced of almost anything if you said the right words in the right order. He had done this before. Not the killing. That part was new. But the rest of it, the grooming, the manipulation, the careful construction of trust and obligation, he had done it dozens of times. There was Katia from Poland who had sent him 5,000 euros before she realized the investment opportunity he promised was fake. There was Marie from France who had flown to New York and ended up drugged in a hotel room while Marcus and a partner stole her passport and credit cards. There was Sienna from London who had been smart enough to reverse image search his photos and expose him online, which had cost him that particular identity but taught him to be more careful. Each girl was a lesson. Each girl made him better at this. And Emma, sweet, hopeful Emma, with her dead father and her student loans and her hunger for something more, Emma was supposed to be easy. She landed at O'Hare on a Friday evening in April. The flight had been long and uncomfortable. 8 hours spent wedged into a middle seat between a businessman who snored and a teenager who watched movies without headphones. Emma had barely slept. She felt grimy and anxious and underprepared. She texted David from baggage claim, her hands shaking slightly as she typed, "Just landed." "Can't believe I'm actually here," he replied immediately. "I'm in the arrivals area. Black jacket. I can't wait to see you." There was a photo attached, him standing near the exit, smiling, holding his phone up. The same face from his profile. Emma felt a flood of relief. He was real. He was here. Everything was going to be okay. She collected her small suitcase, a battered thing she had borrowed from Lena, and walked through customs. The officer had looked at her passport, at her face, and asked the purpose of her visit. "Tourism," she had said. He stamped the page and waved her through. No idea that he had just let a lamb walk into a slaughterhouse. The arrivals area was crowded, families reuniting. Business travelers speed walking toward ground transportation. Emma scanned the faces, her heart hammering, and then she saw him. Tall graying hair, black jacket. He looked like his photos, almost exactly. But something in his eyes was different when she got closer. Sharper. Colder. Or maybe she imagined it. Maybe it was just nerves. He smiled and opened his arms and said, "Emma, finally." She stepped into his embrace and he hugged her tight. Too tight. His hand on the small of her back, possessive and firm. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else. Something chemical she could not place. "Welcome to Chicago," he said. They took an Uber to the hotel. Marcus, playing David, asked about her flight, her mother, her excitement about the city. His voice was smooth, practiced, the same warmth she had heard in their video calls. But he sat close in the back seat. His hand rested on her knee. When she shifted slightly away, uncomfortable with the intimacy, he squeezed gently and smiled. "Just happy you're here," he said. She smiled back, uncertain. The city rolled past the windows, highways and overpasses, and a skyline that looked like something from a movie. Emma tried to focus on that, on the newness and possibility, but her stomach was tight with something she could not name. The Langham rose before them, glass and steel and luxury that felt like a movie set, like something from a life she would never actually live. Marcus checked him in with a credit card that did not decline, which later, much later, when detectives were piecing together his operation, would turn out to have been stolen from a retired accountant in Ohio. The woman at the front desk smiled and handed over 2 key cards and said, "Enjoy your stay." Emma wondered if the woman noticed anything wrong, if she saw the age difference, the tension, the way Emma's hands were gripping the strap of her bag like a lifeline. But the woman just smiled and turned to the next guest. The room was on the 19th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, a king bed with white linens that looked like they had never been slept in, a bottle of champagne in the silver bucket, condensation running down the sides. Emma set down her suitcase and walked to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The city stretched out below, lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. She felt very far from home. Marcus came up behind her. Close. Too close. She could feel the heat of his body, the presence of him in her space. He put his hands on her shoulders. "Look at that view," he said. "This is your city now, too." Emma laughed, but it came out wrong. Nervous and high-pitched. She turned to face him, and his expression had changed. The warmth was gone. In its place was something expectant, something transactional. He reached up and touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone, his fingers in her hair. "Emma," he said quietly, "you know why you're here, don't you?" And in that moment, in that hotel room 3,000 miles from anyone who loved her, Emma understood. She understood that every message, every kindness, every euro transferred had been a step toward this. That the mentorship had always been a lie, that she had been bought without realizing a purchase was being made. Her stomach dropped. Ice flooded her veins. She stepped back, his hand falling away. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said. Her voice was small, younger than her 21 years. "I thought we were just going to explore the city, be friends. Maybe I should get my own room. I can pay for my own room." Marcus's face hardened. The mask slipped completely. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He spoke with the calm of someone who had done this before, who knew exactly how this worked. "Emma," he said, "I've spent a lot of money on you. The flights, this hotel, the laptop, the rent, the textbooks, all of it. You're a smart girl. You know how this works. You knew when you agreed to come here." He stepped toward her. She stepped back. Her legs hit the edge of the bed. "No," she said. "No, this isn't what I thought. This isn't what you said. I'll pay you back. I can pay you back. I'll get a job. I'll work. I'll send you everything." He laughed. It was not a kind sound. It was the sound of a man who had heard this exact plea before and found it tedious. "With what?" he said. "Your bookstore wages? You make what, 10 euros an hour? It'll take you 5 years to pay me back." He moved closer. "You came here, Emma. You got on a plane. You lied to your mother. You knew what this was. Don't play innocent now. It's insulting." Emma's phone was in her purse on the table near the door. Her passport was in her suitcase. Her mind raced through options that all felt impossible. She thought about screaming, but the walls were thick and expensive, and who would believe her? She thought about running, but where would she go in a city she did not know, with no money, no contacts, no plan? She thought about her mother, about the lies she had told, about how no one even knew she was in Chicago, how she had covered her tracks so carefully that she had erased herself. "Please," she said, and her voice broke. "I just want to leave. Just let me leave and I'll never tell anyone. I promise." Marcus's expression shifted again. He sighed, ran a hand through his graying hair, and suddenly the warmth returned, manufactured and thin as paper. "Okay," he said. "Okay, Emma, I'm sorry. I came on too strong. You're right. Let's just slow down. Let's just have dinner. Let's talk. No pressure, I promise." He smiled. That same smile from his messages, from his photos, the smile that had made her trust him. Emma wanted to believe him because the alternative was too terrifying to accept. She nodded slowly. "Dinner," she said. "Just dinner." They went to a steakhouse on Michigan Avenue, a place with dark wood and low lighting and prices that made Emma's eyes water. Marcus ordered wine without asking if she wanted any. He talked about the city, about places she should visit, about the architecture, about his work. He was charming again, attentive. He apologized twice more for the misunderstanding. He told her she was beautiful and intelligent and that he just wanted to spend time with her, to get to know her better. "No expectations," he said. "I'm not that kind of guy." Emma drank the wine too fast. It was rich and red and tasted like something she could never afford. She told herself this could still be okay, that maybe she had overreacted, that maybe he really did just want companionship, that maybe the moment in the hotel room had been a miscommunication, a cultural difference, something that could be smoothed over and forgotten. The waiter brought food, steak and potatoes and vegetables that looked like art. Emma pushed it around her plate. Her appetite had vanished. Marcus ate with enthusiasm, telling stories, making jokes, acting like everything was normal. And maybe, Emma thought, maybe it was normal. Maybe this was just how these arrangements worked. Awkward at first, then fine. She was young. She was naive. Maybe she just needed to adjust her expectations. By the time they returned to the hotel, Emma was dizzy and exhausted and convincing herself that she could make this work. She could sleep on the couch. She would fly home in the morning. She would block David's number. She would never speak of this to anyone. It would become a shameful secret she carried alone, like all the other shameful secrets she had collected over the years. But there was no couch in the room, only the bed, only the chair by the window, only Marcus locking the door behind them with a click that sounded final. Only his hands on her again, rougher now, and his voice low and cold. "You're not going anywhere, Emma. We had a deal." She tried to push him away. He grabbed her wrists. She tried to scream. He put his hand over her mouth. She tried to fight, but he was stronger, heavier, meaner, and she was just a girl who studied business and worked in a bookstore and wore her dead father's watch and thought the world would be kinder than this. What happened in that room over the next hours is what happens when power meets vulnerability, when manipulation becomes violence, when a young woman realizes too late that the trap is already closed and there is no one coming to open it. Emma fought. She cried. She begged. She said please until the word lost meaning. She tried to reach her phone, but Marcus grabbed it first, scrolled through her messages, saw that she had told Lena she was visiting a friend, told her mother she was on a university trip, told no one where she really was or who she was really with. He laughed at that. "You're a ghost," he said. "No one's even looking for you. No one knows you're here. You could disappear and it would be days before anyone noticed." At some point, Emma stopped fighting. At some point, her mind separated from her body. A mercy the brain offers when reality becomes unbearable. She stared at the ceiling, at a crack in the plaster that branched like a river, and thought about her father. About the morning he died, about how she had been taking a math test and worrying about derivatives while his heart was stopping, about how she had not been there, about how she was always not there when it mattered. She thought about her mother waiting for Sunday's call. She thought about Felix and whether he would remember her. She thought about Lena finding the lies she had left behind. She thought about her father's watch on her wrist, still ticking, 3 minutes slow, 3 minutes behind the world. At some point, Marcus finished. At some point, he rolled off her and lay beside her, breathing hard, satisfied. He told her she had been good. He told her tomorrow would be easier. He told her they would go to breakfast, see the city, and that if she was smart, if she behaved, this could actually be nice. He fell asleep quickly, his breathing evening out, his arm draped across her like she was his possession. Emma lay still. She waited. She counted his breaths. She counted the cracks in the ceiling. She counted all the moments that had led her here. All the choices, all the lies, all the small betrayals of herself that had accumulated into this. And at some point, in the blue hours before dawn when the city outside was quiet and the only sound was Marcus breathing beside her, Emma Schneider made a decision. She would leave. She would slip out of the bed, gather her things, and leave. She did not care about the money she owed. She did not care about her suitcase. She did not care about anything except getting out of this room and getting to the airport and getting on a plane back to Munich where she would tell her mother everything and accept the consequences. She had been stupid. She had been desperate. But she did not deserve this. No one deserved this. She waited until his breathing deepened into the rhythm of real sleep. She slipped from the bed as quietly as her heartbeat would allow. Her hands shook as she gathered her phone from the table, her passport from her suitcase, her shoes from beside the door. She did not bother with clothes. She was still wearing the dress from dinner, wrinkled now, smelling like wine and fear. She moved toward the door, each step careful, each breath controlled. Her fingers touched the lock. She turned it slowly. The mechanism clicked. Too loud. Far too loud. And then Marcus's hand was on her wrist, yanking her backward with such force that she stumbled. His face was twisted with rage. "Where do you think you're going?" he said. His voice was a hiss. "You think you can just leave after what you owe me?" Emma tried to pull away. She tried to scream. He shoved her hard, and she fell backward, her hip hitting the edge of the nightstand, her balance gone. She went down and her head struck the corner of the nightstand with a sound that was both sharp and dull. A sound like a branch breaking, a sound the medical examiner would later describe as consistent with blunt force trauma to the temporal bone. Emma crumpled to the floor. Pain exploded behind her eyes, white and all-consuming. She tried to lift her head. She could not lift her head. Blood pooled warm beneath her, spreading dark against the white carpet. Her vision blurred. She could see Marcus standing over her, breathing hard, his face pale. She could see her phone on the floor 6 feet away, the screen cracked, the screen glowing. She could see her father's watch on her wrist. She could not see. Marcus stood over her, watching her eyes flutter and close. He said her name once. Emma, then again. Emma. Then he grabbed his jacket and his wallet and his phone and he left. He did not check if she was breathing. He did not call for help. He simply left. He walked out of the room at 5017 in the morning according to hotel security footage. He took the elevator to the lobby. He nodded at the night clerk. He walked out onto Michigan Avenue where the city was just beginning to wake. He disappeared into the crowd of faces that moved through Chicago every day. Millions of people, millions of stories, millions of ways to vanish. The housekeeper found Emma at 11 the next morning. The door had been left slightly ajar, the do not disturb sign removed. The housekeeper knocked twice, received no answer, used her key card. She saw the blood first, then the body. She backed out of the room and called security. Security called the police. The police called the medical examiner. Emma Schneider was pronounced dead at the scene. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the temporal bone resulting in epidural hematoma and brain herniation. Time of death, estimated between 4:00 and 6:00 a.m. The hotel staff remembered the man who had checked in with her. Tall, graying hair, black jacket. But the name on the credit card was fake. The ID he had shown at check-in was fake. The security footage showed him leaving in the early morning hours, walking calmly, showing no signs of distress or urgency. He looked like any other guest leaving a hotel. Unremarkable. Forgettable. Lena called Emma's phone 37 times that weekend. Each call went to voicemail. Each voicemail grew more frantic. The first few were casual. Hey, call me back. Then worried. Emma, where are you? Then scared. I'm really worried. Please call me. Then desperate. Emma, please. I'm going to call your mom. On Monday morning, when Emma still had not responded, Lena called Emma's mother. Emma's mother had already been worried. Emma had not called on Sunday evening. Emma always called on Sunday evening. When Lena told her that Emma had gone to America, Emma's mother felt her blood turn to ice. What friend? She said. Emma doesn't have friends in America. Lena realized then that something was very wrong. Emma's mother called the university. The university had no record of any study trip to America. Emma's mother called the police. The German police contacted Interpol. Interpol contacted the Chicago Police Department. By Tuesday evening, detectives had identified Emma's body through fingerprints and dental records. By Wednesday, Emma's mother was on a plane to Chicago, her world ending for the second time in 5 years. By Thursday, she was standing in a morgue looking at her daughter's face, pale and still, and removing the watch from her daughter's wrist, the Seiko that had belonged to her husband, the watch that was still running, 3 minutes slow. Emma's phone was unlocked by investigators who found months of messages from a man named David Reichman. Messages full of affection and promises and carefully constructed lies. They traced the profile to an IP address in Cicero. They traced that address to an apartment building on West Cermak Road. They traced that apartment to a man named Marcus Webb. They obtained a warrant. They arrested him on April 19th, 7 days after Emma died. He was in a bar in Berwyn, using the same phone, messaging another young woman. This one was from Poland. Her name was Zofia. She was 19. She was a nursing student. She needed money for her mother's surgery. Marcus had told her he could help. In Marcus's apartment, police found 3 other burner phones, 5 fake IDs under different names, and a laptop with folders organized by first names: Emma, Katya, Marie. Sienna, Anya, Zofia. Each folder contained photos, messages, bank statements, travel itineraries. Each folder was a girl who had believed she was special, who had believed in David or Michael or Robert or whatever name Marcus was using that week. Some had visited him. Some had sent money. Some had disappeared from the narrative, blocked and discarded when they became too difficult or too suspicious or too aware. Emma was the first to die, but she was not the first to suffer. Marcus Webb was charged with second-degree murder, wire fraud, identity theft, and interstate trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation. His trial began in November of that year. The prosecution argued premeditation, a pattern of predatory behavior, a calculated scheme that had been operating for years. They brought in Katya from Poland, who testified about the money she had lost. They brought in Marie from France, who testified about waking up in a hotel room with no memory of the previous 12 hours and her passport missing. They brought in an FBI agent who had tracked Marcus's digital footprint across a dozen identities, dozens of victims, hundreds of fraudulent transactions. They showed the jury Emma's messages, the way Marcus had slowly built her trust, the way he had exploited her grief and her hope and her desperate need to help her family. The defense argued accident. They said Marcus had never intended to kill Emma. They said he had panicked when she tried to leave, that he had pushed her in self-defense, that her death was a tragic accident resulting from a fall. They painted Emma as complicit, as someone who knew exactly what she was agreeing to when she got on that plane. They showed the jury her seeking arrangements profile. They read her messages out of context, stripping away the manipulation, making her desperation sound like desire. They said she had wanted to come to Chicago. They said she had accepted money knowing what it meant. They said she had lied to her family because she knew what she was doing was wrong. They turned Emma into a person who deserved what happened to her, which is what defense attorneys do when they have no other option, when the facts are damning and the only strategy left is to make the victim into something less than human. Emma's mother sat in the courtroom every day of the trial. She wore black. She held her husband's watch in her hand, the one they had removed from her daughter's wrist in the morgue, the one that still ran 3 minutes slow. She listened to strangers debate her child's choices, her child's innocence, her child's worth. She listened to the defense attorney suggest that Emma had been a prostitute, which was the word he used. Not sugar baby, not arrangement, but prostitute, as if that word could justify what Marcus had done. She listened to them say her daughter had known the risks. She listened to them say her daughter had been asking for it. And she sat very still, her face blank, because if she allowed herself to feel anything, she would start screaming and never stop. When she was finally allowed to speak, during the victim impact statement phase, she walked to the podium and stood there for a long moment. She looked at Marcus Webb, who sat at the defense table staring at nothing, his face empty of emotion. She looked at the jury. She looked at the judge. And then she spoke. "My daughter's name was Emma Schneider," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. She was 21 years old. She was studying international business. She wanted to work in international markets, to travel, to build something meaningful. She worked at a bookstore on weekends. She sent me money when she could, even though she had none to spare. She wore her father's watch every day, even though it ran 3 minutes slow. She called me every Sunday evening. She loved her younger brother. She made terrible jokes. She cried during sad movies. She was afraid of spiders. She bit her nails when she was nervous. She was a real person. She was my daughter. Emma's mother paused. Her hands gripped the podium. "My daughter made a mistake," she continued. "She trusted someone she should not have trusted. She wanted to believe people were good. She wanted to believe that someone might help her without expecting something terrible in return. That is not a crime. Being hopeful is not a crime. Being desperate is not a crime. Being young and naive and scared about money is not a crime. What you did to her," she said, looking directly at Marcus, "is a crime. You hunted her. You manipulated her. You exploited her. And when she tried to leave, when she tried to save herself, you killed her. And now I will spend the rest of my life without my daughter. My son will grow up without his sister. And there is no amount of prison time that will ever make that right." She stepped away from the podium. She sat back down. She did not cry. She had no tears left. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Marcus Webb guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge noted the predatory nature of his crimes, the vulnerability of his victims, the calculated manipulation that had led to Emma's death. Marcus Webb was sentenced to 32 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no emotion when the sentence was read. He did not apologize. He did not look at Emma's mother. He simply stood and allowed himself to be led away by the bailiffs, back to a cell, back to a life that would be measured in concrete and razor wire and the slow passage of years that would never be enough. Emma's body was flown back to Munich and buried beside her father in a cemetery on the outskirts of Heidelberg. The funeral was small. Family and a few close friends. Lena spoke, her voice breaking, about what a good friend Emma had been, about how she wished she had asked more questions, about how she would carry the guilt of not protecting her for the rest of her life. Felix, Emma's younger brother, who was 17 and looked so much like his father it hurt to see him, read a poem Emma had written in high school about the impermanence of things. Emma's mother stood at the grave and placed her husband's watch on top of the casket before it was lowered into the ground. She thought about how her daughter had worn it for 5 years, how it had been the last piece of her father Emma had held on to, how it would stay with her now forever, 3 minutes slow, 3 minutes behind the world, 3 minutes closer to the moment when everything was still whole. In the months that followed, Emma's mother could not return to work. She could not sleep. She could not exist in the world the way she had before. But she also could not sit still. She started researching, seeking arrangements, sugar daddy websites, the ways young women were being exploited through platforms that promised mentorship and opportunity but delivered abuse and manipulation. She discovered that Emma was not an anomaly. She discovered hundreds of stories, thousands of stories, young women who had been scammed or assaulted or trafficked or killed by men who used these sites to hunt for victims. She discovered that the websites operated with impunity, hiding behind terms of service that absolved them of responsibility, that made the women liable for their own exploitation. Emma's mother started a foundation. She named it the Emma Schneider Foundation. She partnered with universities across Germany, across Europe, to provide financial literacy programs and safety resources for students. She gave talks about the dangers of sugar daddy arrangements, about the ways predators weaponize desperation, about the coded language that makes transactions sound like relationships. She showed Emma's photo, the one from the summer with the light hair and the genuine smile, and she said, "This is who they target, the hopeful, the kind, the ones who believe in better." She told them about the watch, about the lies Emma had told, about how no one had known where she was when she died. She told them, "If you are in trouble, tell someone, anyone. Do not disappear. Do not make yourself a ghost." Felix graduated from gymnasium that spring. He dedicated his diploma to his sister. He kept her journal, the one she had never let anyone read, and sometimes late at night he would open it and read her thoughts, her fears, her dreams. He read about how she had felt stuck, how she had wanted more, how she had been afraid of disappointing their mother. He read about David, about the messages, about the trip to Chicago. The entries stopped 3 days before she left. The last entry said, "I'm scared, but I think this is my chance. I think this is how things change." Felix closed the journal and cried for the sister who had thought hope was the same as wisdom, who had thought wanting was the same as deserving, who had died believing she had made a choice when really the choice had been made for her long before she ever created that profile. The Seeking Arrangements website still operates. Millions of profiles, millions of messages, millions of young people convinced they are entering arrangements that are empowering, transactional, safe. The website's marketing materials talk about modern relationships, about redefining dating, about connections based on mutual benefit. They show photos of beautiful young women and distinguished older men at nice restaurants, at the theater, at charity galas. They do not show hotel rooms at 5 in the morning. They do not show blood on white carpet. They do not show mothers identifying bodies in foreign countries. Some arrangements do work out. Some people do find legitimate mentorship or companionship or relationships that function on agreed terms where both parties have actual power. But many do not. Many find Marcus Webb, or men like him, men who understand that desperation dressed up as ambition is easy to exploit. Men who know that a girl who lies to her mother about where she is going is a girl no one will look for right away. Men who bank on shame keeping their victims silent. The website itself operates in a gray legal zone, protected by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which shields platforms from liability for content posted by users. As long as they are not directly facilitating prostitution, as long as they maintain the fiction of mentorship and arrangement and mutual benefit, they are legally untouchable. When Emma's mother tried to sue them, tried to hold them accountable for providing the infrastructure that allowed Marcus to hunt her daughter, the case was dismissed. The judge ruled that the website was not responsible for what its users chose to do. Emma's mother stood on the courthouse steps and told reporters, "They built the trap. They just let other people spring it." Marcus Webb sits in federal prison. He gives interviews sometimes to journalists, to podcasters, to people fascinated by the psychology of predators. He talks about his difficult childhood, about his absent father, about his struggles with intimacy. He expresses regret, though he stops short of taking full responsibility. He calls Emma's death an accident. He says he thinks about her often. He says if he could go back, he would do things differently. He does not say what exactly he would do differently. He does not say he is sorry. When asked about the other women, about Katya and Marie and the dozens of others in the folders on his computer, he says they were all willing participants. He says they knew what they were doing. He says the world is full of people taking advantage of each other, and he was just playing the game. He will be 65 years old when he is released. By then, Emma will have been dead for 32 years. By then, her mother will likely be dead. By then, Felix will be middle-aged, living a life shaped by the absence of his sister. By then, Emma herself will be a story, a cautionary tale, a name on a foundation website. But right now, in this moment, in the present tense where Emma's death is still recent and raw, she is more than a story. She is the girl who wore her father's watch, the girl who studied international business and dreamed of travel, the girl who worked at a bookstore and sent money home to her mother, the girl who believed that wanting something better was not a crime, that trusting someone was not weakness, that hope was a reasonable thing to carry into the world. She was 21 years old. She had a future. And then she didn't. The last message on her phone, found by investigators, was one she had typed but never sent. It was addressed to her mother. It was written at 4:52 a.m. the morning she died, in the minutes before she tried to leave, in the minutes before Marcus woke up and stopped her. The message read, "Mama, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I should have told you the truth. I'm in Chicago. I'm not safe. I'm going to the airport. I'm coming home. I love you. Please don't be angry. I just wanted to help. I just wanted things to be better. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She never pressed send. Her thumb was hovering over the button when she decided she needed to move, needed to get out, needed to leave the phone and just run. And so the message stayed there, trapped in digital amber, a ghost of intention, a record of the moment when Emma knew she was in danger and tried to save herself. The police showed it to her mother. Emma's mother read it 17 times standing in that hotel room where her daughter had died. She read it and understood that Emma had known at the end that she had made a mistake, that Emma had tried to come home, that Emma had been thinking of her. And that knowledge was both a comfort and a torture, because it meant her daughter had died afraid and alone and sorry, and there was nothing anyone could do to change it. Emma Schneider was 21 years old when she died in a hotel room she never should have been in, betrayed by a man who never existed, killed by a man who saw her as nothing more than an opportunity to exploit. She was ordinary, she was hopeful. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's friend. She wore her dead father's watch and sent money home and believed that the world might be kind if she just worked hard enough, if she just trusted the right person, if she just took a chance. And that belief, that beautiful and tragic and human belief, is what killed her. The world is full of Emma Schneiders, young women who are tired and broke and desperate for opportunity. Young women who create profiles on websites that promise mentorship and deliver abuse. Young women who lie to their families because shame is a powerful silencer. Young women who get on planes to meet men they have never met, men who have constructed elaborate fantasies, men who understand that hope is the easiest thing in the world to weaponize. Some of them come home, some of them do not. Some of them become statistics, some of them become stories, some of them become foundations named in their honor. But all of them, every single one, deserves better than what happened to Emma Schneider in a hotel room in Chicago in the early hours of an April morning while the city slept and her mother waited for a phone call that would never come.